My name is Danita and I'm 32 years old. I grew up poor in rural Pennsylvania before tragedy struck, forcing me to live with my wealthy uncle's family in Chicago. 10 years ago, I left with nothing but a small box and broken dreams. Now I stood in the elevator, rising toward the penthouse, where my cousin Lisa was celebrating. My hands trembled slightly. The doors opened to crystal chandeliers and champagne flutes. Then Lisa spotted me. Who let her in? She's like mold, keeps coming back. Little did she know whose floor she was standing on. If you're watching, let me know where you're viewing from in the comments, and hit that like and subscribe button as I reveal how I reclaimed what was rightfully mine. My childhood in rural Pennsylvania was simple but happy. We didn't have much, but my parents filled our modest 3-bedroom house with love and laughter. Dad worked at the local paper mill while Mom taught piano lessons from our living room. Every Sunday we'd have picnics by the lake regardless of the weather. Even in winter we'd bring thermoses of hot chocolate and sit in the car watching snowflakes dance across the frozen water's surface. Everything changed when I was 16. My parents were driving home from their anniversary dinner when a drunk driver hit them head-on. Neither survived. I can still remember the sheriff knocking on our door hat in hand, his face telling me everything before he spoke a word. With no other immediate family nearby, I was sent to live with my Uncle Robert, my father's older brother, and his family in their luxurious Chicago mansion. Uncle Robert had made his fortune in real estate development building high-rise condos across the Midwest. Aunt Margaret, his wife, came from old money, and never let anyone forget it. Their daughter Lisa was 15, just a year younger than me. From day one, Lisa made it clear she didn't want me there. The first night, she accidentally spilled cranberry juice on my white bedspread. When I arrived at her prestigious private school, she told everyone I was their charity case, a poor relative they'd taken in out of pity. Don't talk to her, I overheard her telling her friends. My parents only took her in because they had to. Her parents couldn't even afford proper life insurance. Lisa was everything I wasn't. She was tall, blonde, and effortlessly popular. Her closet was filled with designer clothes and she drove a brand new BMW to school. Meanwhile, I wore thrift store finds and took the bus. While I struggled to adjust to my new school's advanced curriculum, Lisa maintained straight, as without seeming to try. One particular incident stands out in my memory. Junior year, we had to complete a science project for the state competition. I spent weeks creating a sophisticated water filtration system inspired by the environmental issues I'd learned about in our old mill town. The night before submission, I left my project in the garage to dry. The next morning, I found it destroyed, the filter components scattered, and the display board soaked. Lisa claimed our family's cat must have knocked it over, but I had seen her car lights turn on in the driveway at 2 in the morning. With no proof and no time to rebuild, I received a failing grade. The only person who showed me genuine kindness was Grandma Rose, Uncle Robert's mother. She lived in a separate wing of the house and seemed to see right through Lisa's perfect facade. Grandma Rose had built the family's initial wealth through smart investments in the 60s before turning the business over to my uncle. She was sharp as a tack at 82 with piercing blue eyes that missed nothing. "You remind me of myself," she told me one afternoon while we sorted through her extensive collection of first edition books. "I came from nothing too. People underestimate the strength that builds in you when you have to fight for everything." Grandma Rose would invite me for tea every Sunday, telling me stories of her youth and teaching me about resilience. "Life isn't about what you're given," she'd say. "It's about what you do with what you have." Remember that, Danita. To earn my own spending money, I started working part-time at a local bakery. Lisa thought this was hilarious. "Imagine being so poor you have to frost cupcakes," she told her friends loudly when they came to the shop. "Couldn't Uncle Robert give you an allowance?" "Oh, wait, you're not really his daughter, are you?" Despite Lisa's constant mockery, I found comfort in my job. The bakery owner, Mrs. Santiago, became another mentor, teaching me about running a business and the value of hard work. Little did I know these lessons would prove far more valuable than anything I could have learned in Lisa's social circles. When high school graduation arrived, Lisa received a brand new Mercedes convertible and an acceptance letter to an Ivy League university, complete with promises of an apartment near campus and a generous monthly allowance. For me, the future looked vastly different. During a tense family dinner, Uncle Robert cleared his throat and informed me that while they had fulfilled their obligation to provide for me through high school college expenses, weren't part of the agreement. "We've done our duty by your parents," Aunt Margaret added, delicately patting her lips with a monogrammed napkin. "Now it's time for you to stand on your own feet." "That's the American way, isn't it?" Lisa smirked across the table. "Maybe you could get a full-time position at the bakery. I'm sure they need someone to mop the floors." That night I cried into my pillow, feeling more alone than ever. The following morning, a knock came at my bedroom door. It was Grandma Rose, looking determined. "Come with me," she whispered, leading me to her private sitting room. She closed the door carefully and handed me an envelope. Inside was $5,000 in cash. "I've been saving this for you," she said. "It's not much, but it might help you make a start." "You're smart, Danita. Smarter than my son, and certainly smarter than that entitled granddaughter of mine. Promise me you'll use this to follow your dreams." I was speechless, tears welling in my eyes. Grandma Rose wasn't finished. From a drawer, she pulled out a small wooden box with intricate carvings. "Take this too," she said. "Inside is a key. I can't tell you what it opens yet, but keep it safe. Someday, when the time is right, it will unlock your future." The mysterious key was attached to a delicate chain with a small tag reading, "When you're ready." I had no idea what it meant, but I trusted Grandma Rose more than anyone. 2 weeks later, I packed everything I owned into 2 suitcases. I left before dawn, catching the first bus to New York City, determined to build a life away from Lisa's constant belittlement and my uncle's cold indifference. I left a note thanking Grandma Rose and promising to make her proud. My first apartment in New York was barely larger than a closet. Located in a rundown building in the far reaches of Queens, it had water stains on the ceiling, a shower that only ran cold, and neighbors who fought loudly at all hours. But it was mine, and that meant something. I quickly found that Grandma Rose's $5,000 wouldn't last long in the city. I took whatever jobs I could find: barista in the morning's restaurant, hostess in the evenings, and weekend shifts at a grocery store. Between jobs, I enrolled in night classes at a community college studying computer programming. Something about coding spoke to me. It was a world where your background didn't matter, only your skills and creativity. 6 months into my New York life, disaster struck. The restaurant where I worked evenings closed suddenly, leaving me short on rent. Then my laptop died, making it impossible to complete my programming assignments. I was forced to drop my classes that semester. When I couldn't make rent, my landlord gave me 3 days to pay up or get out. I spent one night sleeping in a 24-hour laundromat, my remaining possessions stuffed into a locker at the bus station. That night, huddled on a plastic chair while washers hummed around me, I considered giving up and returning to Chicago. Maybe I could apologize to Uncle Robert, accept whatever conditions he imposed just to have a roof over my head. As if sensing my moment of weakness, my phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. It was a photo of her in a gorgeous apartment, champagne in hand, tagged sophomore year, living upgrade, with a follow-up message. "How's the big city treating you, Danita? Still working in that coffee shop? Or have you moved up to waitressing now?" I turned my phone off and wiped away tears of frustration. Lisa had everything handed to her on a silver platter while I was fighting for basic survival. But something hardened inside me that night. I would not go back. I would not give Lisa the satisfaction of seeing me fail. The next morning, I pawned the only valuable thing I owned, a pearl necklace that had belonged to my mother. It wasn't worth much, but it gave me enough for a week in a hostel. From there, I rebuilt. I found a roommate situation in Brooklyn, took on additional freelance data entry work, and slowly climbed back from the edge. Through it all, I kept Grandma Rose's mysterious key around my neck. Sometimes during my darkest moments, I would hold it tight, wondering what future it could possibly unlock when my present seemed so bleak. 6 months after my near-homelessness life took an unexpected turn. I was working the morning shift at Riverside Coffee when a man spilled his latte all over his laptop. While other staff rushed to clean the mess, I helped him save his computer, quickly removing the battery and properly drying the components. "You know your way around computers," he remarked, surprised. "Most people would have just wiped it with napkins." The man introduced himself as Alex Reyes, a software engineer at a small but growing tech startup. We got talking about my night classes and my passion for app development. Before he left, he handed me his business card. We need quality control testers who understand basic coding. The pay's decent, and the hours are flexible. Email me if you're interested. I almost cried with relief. The QA position paid twice what I was making at the coffee shop with actual benefits. More importantly, it gave me access to professional developers who were willing to mentor me. I soaked up knowledge like a sponge, staying late to learn from anyone willing to teach me. After a year, I moved from QA to junior developer. By year 2, I was leading my own projects. I continued my formal education part-time, finally earning my associate's degree in computer science. My big break came when I developed a personal finance app designed specifically for gig economy workers. Having juggled multiple jobs myself, I understood the challenges of irregular income. My app helped users track earnings, set aside taxes, and plan for lean periods. What started as a side project caught the attention of our CEO when it gained traction in app stores. The company decided to fully back my creation, giving me a development team and marketing budget. Within 18 months, my app had over 2 million users. When a major financial software company offered to buy it for 8 figures, our startup couldn't refuse. As the creator, I received a substantial cut of the acquisition and stock options in both companies. At 28, I suddenly found myself with more money than I had ever imagined. I bought a comfortable but modest condo in Brooklyn and invested the rest, remembering Grandma Rose's lessons about building wealth slowly and wisely. Throughout these years, I maintained minimal contact with my uncle's family. Occasional holiday cards to Grandma Rose were the extent of our communication. I had heard through family connections that she was in declining health, which worried me deeply. Then came the call I had been dreading. Grandma Rose had passed away peacefully in her sleep at age 89. To my surprise, the family lawyer informed me that Grandma Rose had left explicit instructions that I not attend the funeral. She didn't want to put you in an uncomfortable position, the lawyer explained. She was quite aware of the family dynamics. A week later, a package arrived containing a final letter from Grandma Rose. "My dearest Danita," it began, "if you're reading this, I have moved on to whatever adventure comes next. Don't grieve for me. Instead, remember what I told you about that key. It's time for you to use it. The enclosed address will show you the way. I've watched your success from afar and couldn't be prouder. You've proven what I always knew: true strength comes from within, not from what others hand you. All my love, Grandma Rose." The address led me to a private bank in downtown Chicago. With trembling hands, I presented Grandma Rose's key to the manager. He led me to a safety deposit box that, when opened, contained a stack of legal documents, property deeds, and investment certificates. I gasped as I realized what I was holding. Grandma Rose had left me her personal penthouse in one of Chicago's most exclusive buildings, and a significant portion of shares in the family company completely separate from the holdings she'd passed to Uncle Robert years ago. A note explained everything. These assets were always mine to give acquired before I brought Robert into the business. I've watched how my son and his family have treated you. They've forgotten the value of earning one's way. You, however, have not. Use these wisely, but don't reveal them yet. Build your own empire first. When the time comes, you'll know what to do. I followed her advice. I kept my inheritance secret and continued building my career in tech. I rented out the Penthouse through a management company, using the income to fund a new venture, my own software development firm focused on financial technology for underserved communities. Over the next 7 years, my company grew from a 3-person operation to employing over 200 people across offices in New York, San Francisco, and Austin. We developed platforms that helped people build credit access microloans and plan for retirement regardless of income level. Magazines began listing me among 30 under 40 entrepreneurs to watch. My net worth grew to well over 9 figures, though I maintained a relatively low public profile. All this time, I kept tabs on my uncle's family through social media. Lisa had married an investment banker and appeared to be living the socialite life she had always wanted. Uncle Robert's business had weathered some difficult years during the economic downturn, forcing him to sell off several properties. I never forgot the penthouse in Chicago, though I hadn't yet found the right moment to claim it as my own. That would soon change. It was a random Tuesday evening when I was scrolling through Instagram that I saw it. Lisa had posted a series of photos with the caption, "Preparing for our 5-year anniversary celebration, number penthouse living, number blessed life." The location tag made my heart skip. It was Grandma Rose's penthouse, my penthouse. I zoomed in on the images. Lisa posing in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased Chicago's stunning skyline. Lisa and her husband, drinking champagne in the gourmet kitchen I had only seen in property photos. Lisa showing off the master bedroom with its custom marble fireplace. My hands shook with anger. How dare they? The property management company had assured me the penthouse was being rented to a corporate client for executive stays. Clearly, Uncle Robert had pulled strings to gain access to the property, probably unaware that I was the true owner. Further investigation confirmed my suspicions. After Grandma Rose's death, Uncle Robert had somehow convinced the property managers that the family had rights to use the penthouse for special occasions. Given the family's prominence in Chicago real estate circles, no one had questioned this arrangement. They had been using my property for years while I remained in New York, building my company and staying away from painful memories. After a sleepless night, I made my decision. It was time to return to Chicago and reclaim what was rightfully mine. Not just the penthouse, but my dignity and the respect Grandma Rose had wanted for me. I spent the next week meticulously planning my return. First, I contacted the family lawyer who had handled Grandma Rose's estate. He confirmed that the property was indeed legally mine, and expressed shock that the family had been using it without permission. The management company should never have allowed this, he said gravely. We can file charges if you wish. Not yet, I replied. I want to handle this my way. Next, I arranged meetings with the building's security company and property management. With documented proof of my ownership, I outlined exactly how I wanted the situation handled during Lisa's upcoming anniversary party. They were embarrassed by their oversight and eager to make amends. I booked a suite at the Four Seasons and had my assistant arrange for a car service. For this confrontation, I wanted every detail perfect. I purchased a stunning red Valentino dress that cost more than my first month's rent in New York. I had my hair and makeup professionally done. If I was going to face Lisa after 10 years, I would do so looking every inch the successful businesswoman I had become. The night before the party, I stood in my hotel room overlooking the Chicago skyline, feeling a complex mix of emotions. There was nervousness, certainly. A decade of building a new life hadn't completely healed the wounds Lisa and her family had inflicted. There was anticipation too, and perhaps a small, shameful part of me that looked forward to seeing their faces when they realized the truth. But mostly there was a sense of coming full circle. I thought of Grandma Rose and how she would have handled this moment. With grace and strength, I could almost hear her say, "But never forget your worth." I touched the deed to the penthouse safely tucked in my purse. Tomorrow would change everything. I was no longer the broken, desperate girl who had fled Chicago with nothing but a mysterious key and fragile dreams. I was returning as a woman who had built an empire through her own determination, ready to reclaim the legacy Grandma Rose had entrusted to me. As I fell asleep that night, I made a promise to myself and to Grandma Rose's memory. This confrontation wasn't about revenge, it was about justice, truth, and finally closing a painful chapter of my life. The elevator ascended silently to the top floor of the prestigious Lakeshore Tower. My heart pounded against my ribs as the numbers climbed 48, 49, 50. With each floor, memories of the past decade flashed through my mind, from sleeping in a laundromat to closing my first $1 million deal. The elevator chimed softly as it reached the penthouse level. I took a deep breath and adjusted my Valentino dress. The security director nodded respectfully as the doors opened. "Everything is arranged as you requested, Miss Sullivan. We'll be standing by." The penthouse lobby was decorated with extravagant flower arrangements and a sign reading, "Happy Anniversary, Lisa and Jordan." I could hear music and laughter from inside. The security director used his master key to open the double doors, and I stepped into my property for the first time. The space was even more magnificent than photos had suggested. Soaring ceilings, walls of glass showcasing panoramic views of Lake Michigan, custom Italian furniture throughout. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over approximately 60 well-dressed guests, mingling with champagne flutes in hand. For a moment, no one noticed me. I took in the details: ice sculptures, a string quartet in the corner, waitstaff circulating with hors d'oeuvres on silver trays. Uncle Robert had aged considerably, his once dark hair now completely silver. Aunt Margaret looked surgically preserved, her face unnaturally tight. And then I saw Lisa. Time had been kind to her. Still tall and blonde, dressed in a designer gown that probably cost as much as my first car. She was laughing with a group of women when she happened to glance toward the entrance. Our eyes met across the room. Her smile vanished instantly. She froze champagne glass halfway to her lips, eyes widening in disbelief. Then her features contorted into a familiar expression of contempt. "Who let her in?" Lisa's voice carried across the room, causing conversations to halt and heads to turn. "She's like mold, keeps coming back." A heavy silence fell over the gathering. All eyes were on me now, standing alone in the doorway. Uncle Robert hurried over his expression, a mix of shock and irritation. "Danita," he said stiffly. "This is a private event. How did you get past security?" Before I could answer, Lisa marched over, husband in tow. Up close, I could see the expensive jewelry adorning her neck and wrists, the perfect manicure, the look of someone who had never had to worry about making rent. "I don't know how you found out about our party," she hissed, "but you need to leave. Now, this is our home." "Your home," I repeated calmly. "Yes," she said with a dismissive laugh. "Well, technically my parents' Chicago pied à terre. But we use it for special occasions. Not that you would understand property ownership." She turned to the gathered guests. "Everyone's sorry for the interruption. This is my cousin from the, less fortunate side of the family. Apparently she's still struggling with boundaries." The crowd tittered uncomfortably. Lisa's husband looked embarrassed but remained silent. "Lisa," I said quietly, "I didn't come here to cause a scene." "Then why are you here?" she demanded. "To beg for money? To ruin my anniversary? Or just to remind yourself of the life you'll never have?" She gestured grandly around the penthouse. 2 years ago, we renovated the entire master suite. Imported marble custom cabinetry, 12,000 square feet of luxury. But you wouldn't know anything about that, would you? Last I heard, you were working at some tech startup. Doing what, answering phones? I remained silent, which only encouraged Lisa to continue. "Jordan, darling, call security. Tell them we have an unwanted guest." Her husband reluctantly took out his phone. I smiled slightly. "That won't be necessary." As if on cue, the elevator doors opened and 3 security officers entered the penthouse. Lisa looked triumphant until they walked past me and approached her directly. "Mr. and Mrs. Harrington," the lead officer said formally, "I'm going to have to ask you and your guests to leave the premises." Lisa's jaw dropped. "Excuse me, do you know who my father is? Who I am?" "Yes, ma'am. And we're aware that you are currently trespassing on private property. The actual owner has asked us to escort you out." The room erupted in confused murmurs. Lisa looked frantically around for her father. Uncle Robert pushed his way forward. "There must be some mistake," he blustered. "This has been our family property for years. My mother left it to me when she passed." I finally spoke up, my voice steady. "Actually, Uncle Robert, Grandma Rose left this penthouse to me, along with 12% of the family company's original shares." The color drained from his face. Lisa stared at me in utter disbelief. "That's impossible," she whispered. I opened my purse and removed the property deed and shareholder documents. "It's been mine for 7 years. I've allowed the management company to rent it out while I was building my business in New York. Apparently they were under the impression that the family had partial usage rights. A misunderstanding I've now clarified." Uncle Robert grabbed the papers, scanning them with increasing agitation. "These must be forgeries. My mother would never." "She would, and she did," I cut in. "Grandma Rose believed in earning your way." Something she felt had been forgotten in this family. Lisa lunged forward suddenly, trying to snatch the documents. You manipulated a sick old woman. You always were her favorite, sucking up to her with your poor little orphan act. The security officer stepped between us. Ma'am, please collect your personal belongings. Your guests need to depart immediately. The reality of the situation finally seemed to hit Lisa. Her carefully constructed facade cracked, revealing the same petty, insecure girl who had tormented me years ago. "You can't do this," she shrieked. "This is our anniversary party. We have guests." "I'm aware," I said evenly. "That's why I've arranged for the celebration to continue at the Peninsula Hotel. Their grand ballroom is prepared to welcome your party. Transportation is waiting downstairs." I turned to the bewildered guests. "Please accept my apologies for the disruption." Lisa's husband stared at me with new interest. "You're paying for this?" I nodded. "Consider it my anniversary gift. I have no desire to ruin your celebration. I just wanted to reclaim what's rightfully mine." The guests began gathering their belongings, whispering among themselves. Uncle Robert looked defeated, the documents hanging limply in his hand. Aunt Margaret was quietly sobbing into a monogrammed handkerchief. As the room emptied, Lisa made one last desperate attempt. "You think this makes you better than me? Coming back after 10 years to humiliate us. What kind of person does that?" I looked at her steadily. The kind who waited until she had built something of her own before claiming her inheritance. Grandma Rose taught me that value. Security began ushering the final stragglers toward the elevator. Lisa Jordan, Uncle Robert, and Aunt Margaret were the last to leave. As they stood waiting for the elevator, Lisa turned to me one final time. "You'll regret this," she said, her voice shaking with rage. "This isn't over." I watched as the elevator doors closed on their shocked faces. And just like that, I was alone in my penthouse, surrounded by the remnants of a party that wasn't mine, finally reclaiming a piece of my past while standing firmly in the present I had built. The silence that followed their departure was deafening. I stood motionless in the center of the vast living room, surrounded by half-empty champagne glasses and abandoned appetizers. The string quartet had packed up hastily, leaving their chairs in a disordered semicircle. An ice sculpture of intertwined hearts was slowly melting on a side table, water pooling beneath it. I walked slowly through the space, trailing my fingers along marble countertops and custom wood paneling. This incredible property had been mine for years, yet this was my first time experiencing it. It felt surreal, like walking through a dream. The penthouse was beautiful, certainly, but it also carried the weight of memories that weren't my own. Lisa and her family had clearly made themselves at home here. Family photos adorned some of the shelves, designer clothes hung in the closets, and personal items were scattered throughout. They had treated my inheritance as their own without a second thought. In what had once been Grandma Rose's study, now converted to a home office, I found evidence of the family's casual appropriation. The antique desk where she had written her letters was gone, replaced by a sleek, modern workstation. The walls, once covered with her beloved art collection, now featured generic corporate prints. My heart sank as I realized how much had been changed or removed. Grandma Rose's extensive library of first editions, her collection of jade figurines from her travels in Asia, the handcrafted chess set she had taught me to play on, all gone. Opening drawer after drawer, I searched for any trace of her presence. In the back of a filing cabinet, I finally found something they had overlooked: an old, leather-bound photo album with Rose's memories embossed on the cover. I sat cross-legged on the floor and carefully opened it. Inside were photos spanning decades from Grandma Rose as a young woman in the 1,950 seconds to family gatherings just a few years before her death. My breath caught when I found a photo of myself at 17 sitting with her in the garden of the family home. We were both laughing, teacups in hand. I hadn't realized anyone had captured that moment. Written beneath in her elegant script, "Danita and me Sunday tea. This one has my spirit." Tears sprang to my eyes. 7 years after her death, I still missed her fierce intelligence and unwavering support. She had seen something in me worth nurturing, when the rest of the family had seen only an inconvenient obligation. The next morning, I met with Mr. Abernathy, the family lawyer who had handled Grandma Rose's estate. Over coffee in the penthouse, I laid out my concerns. Besides using the property without permission, I'm worried about what happened to Grandma Rose's personal belongings, I explained. Her art collection alone was worth millions. Mr. Abernathy shifted uncomfortably. I'm afraid most of those items were claimed by your uncle shortly after Mrs. Sullivan's death. As executor, he had access to the property before the ownership transfer was finalized. Were those items specifically bequeathed to him, I asked. Not all of them, he admitted. Mrs. Sullivan's will included a detailed inventory of items intended for you. I have a copy here. He slid a folder across the table. I paged through the list, my anger growing. Paintings, antiques, jewelry, family heirlooms, all meant for me, all apparently appropriated by Uncle Robert and Aunt Margaret. There's more, Mr. Abernathy said hesitantly. The shares Mrs. Sullivan left you were supposed to come with a board position in the family company. Your uncle convinced the other members that you had waived that right by moving to New York? I set down my coffee cup with deliberate care. So they've not only used my property and taken my inheritance, but they've also denied me my rightful place in the company my grandmother helped build. I'm afraid so, he sighed. As your attorney, I should advise you that you have grounds for several lawsuits. Conversion of property breach of fiduciary duty corporate malfeasance. I sat back, considering my options. I could drag the family through protracted legal battles, airing our dirty laundry in public. It would likely result in financial settlements in my favor. But at what cost? More bitterness, more division, more years focused on the past rather than the future. I need to speak with them, I decided. Face to face before I make any decisions about legal action. 2 days later, Uncle Robert and Aunt Margaret arrived at the penthouse looking tense and defensive. They had requested Lisa not be present, a small mercy given the volatility of our last encounter. Thank you for coming, I said, showing them to the living room where I'd arranged coffee and pastries. Neither touched the refreshments. Let's cut to the chase, Uncle Robert said brusquely. You've made your point. You embarrassed Lisa on her anniversary and kicked us out of the penthouse. What more do you want? Money, a public apology? I want to understand, I replied calmly. Why did you take things that Grandma Rose specifically left to me? Why did you block my board position? Why use this property without permission when you have 3 other homes? Aunt Margaret's perfectly composed face twisted with unexpected emotion. Because it should have been ours. Robert was her son. He built the company to what it is today. Then Mother Rose got these ridiculous notions about you being more deserving because you struggled. She spat the last word like it tasted bitter. Margaret, Uncle Robert cautioned, but she was on a roll. You were nothing, a charity case we took in out of obligation. Then you ran away like an ungrateful child, never even sending a proper thank you for the years we housed and fed you. And for this, Mother Rose rewarded you with prime real estate and company shares. It's insulting. I let her words wash over me without reaction, which seemed to infuriate her further. And now you waltz back after 10 years, flaunting your success, making us look like fools in front of our friends. Do you have any idea what you've done to Lisa? She's devastated, humiliated. Uncle Robert finally intervened. What Margaret is trying to say is that we felt entitled to use the penthouse because we believed Mother's decision was influenced by sentimentality rather than sound judgment. So, you felt justified in taking what wasn't yours, I stated flatly. We felt we were correcting an injustice, he countered. The conversation continued in circles, with neither of them accepting responsibility for their actions. They blamed Grandma Rose for playing favorites, blamed me for abandoning the family, and even blamed their financial advisor for suggesting they liquidate some of Grandma Rose's art collection during a cash flow crunch. As they were preparing to leave, the elevator doors opened, and Lisa stormed in, clearly having waited downstairs despite her parents' wishes. I couldn't let you handle this without me, she announced, glaring at her parents before turning to me. You think you've won, don't you? Swooping in with your money and your legal documents? This isn't about winning, Lisa, I said wearily. Isn't it? She paced the room, agitated. You were always so self-righteous, even when we were teenagers. Poor Danita, so hardworking, so deserving. Grandma's perfect little project. I studied my cousin carefully. Behind the anger I detected something else hurt, perhaps even a hint of shame. "I never understood why you hated me so much," I said quietly. "What did I ever do to you besides exist?" Lisa stopped pacing. For a moment her carefully constructed facade cracked. "You made me look bad without even trying," she said, her voice suddenly small. "Dad was always comparing us." Danita got straight. As without tutors, Danita doesn't ask for handouts. Danita understands the value of hard work. I was never enough. "So you decided to make my life miserable to prove your worth." "I decided to show everyone who really belonged in this family," she retorted, the vulnerability vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. I sighed. "Lisa, I never wanted to take anything from you. I just wanted to be treated with basic decency. And now, what do you want now? To sue us into bankruptcy, to take over the company, to ruin our reputation in Chicago." I considered her questions carefully before answering. "What I want is for you to return the items Grandma Rose left me. I want my board seat in the company. And I want acknowledgement of the wrong that was done both recently and years ago." Uncle Robert stepped forward. "And if we comply with these requests, then we move forward as family, however distant. No lawsuits, no public scandal." The three of them exchanged glances, silently calculating their options. "We'll need time to locate and collect the items," Uncle Robert finally said. "Some may have been sold." "Make a full inventory of what's gone," I replied. "We can discuss fair compensation for those pieces." As they prepared to leave for the second time, Lisa hung back. When her parents had stepped into the elevator, she turned to me. "For what it's worth," she said stiffly, "I've thought about how I treated you when we were younger. It wasn't. I shouldn't have." She couldn't quite bring herself to apologize directly, but it was something, a tiny crack in the wall between us. "We were both kids, Lisa. We're not anymore." She nodded once sharply and joined her parents in the elevator. As the doors closed, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. The confrontation hadn't gone perfectly, but it was a start. The truth was finally out in the open, and with it came the possibility, however, slight, of healing. 1 year has passed since that dramatic confrontation in the penthouse. So much has changed both in the space around me and within my heart. As I look out over Chicago's skyline from these floor-to-ceiling windows, I barely recognize the woman I was 12 months ago, so focused on reclaiming what was taken, so determined to prove my worth. The penthouse itself has undergone a transformation. Gone are the sterile designer furnishings my cousins had installed. In their place, I've created a warm, inviting space that honors Grandma Rose while reflecting my own journey. Her restored antique desk now occupies the corner of the main living area where I often sit to write or work. The walls showcase the artwork I've managed to recover alongside new pieces from emerging artists whose stories of overcoming adversity resonated with me. But the biggest change came 3 months after the confrontation. After spending several weekends alone in this massive space, I realized it was too much for one person. That's when inspiration struck. Now the Penthouse serves as headquarters for the Rose Sullivan Foundation, a nonprofit I established to provide housing, education, and mentorship to young women aging out of foster care or facing homelessness after family crises. The guest bedrooms have been converted into offices where a staff of 12 works to match vulnerable young women with opportunities in technology and business. The grand dining room is now a conference space where we host workshops on financial literacy, coding boot camps, and entrepreneurship seminars. 3 days a week, the kitchen becomes a culinary training program in partnership with local restaurants. This repurposing of the space feels right, like something Grandma Rose would have approved of wholeheartedly. Taking something meant for privilege and transforming it into a launchpad for those who need it most has been profoundly healing. My relationship with Lisa and her family has evolved in unexpected ways. The initial aftermath of our confrontation was predictably tense. Uncle Robert reluctantly returned most of the items listed in Grandma Rose's will, though several pieces had indeed been sold and required financial settlement. My board position was restored with minimal enthusiasm from other members, but I've since earned their respect through thoughtful contributions. Lisa herself has shown the most surprising growth. Our first board meeting together was awkward with her barely acknowledging my presence. But a company crisis 3 months in forced us to work together on a restructuring plan. During late nights poring over financial statements and strategy documents, walls slowly began to crumble. "I never knew you were so good with numbers," she admitted during 1-2 a.m. session, the fatigue perhaps making her more candid than usual. "There's a lot we never knew about each other," I replied. A tentative truce formed, then gradually evolved into something resembling mutual respect. Lisa's husband lost his job in a banking scandal 6 months ago, forcing her to take a more active role in the family business. Without her parents' financial safety net now somewhat diminished due to market downturns, she's had to stand on her own feet for perhaps the first time. I've watched her struggle, adapt, and slowly grow into her capabilities. There's a new gravity to her now, a hard-earned maturity that makes our interactions less combative and occasionally even pleasant. We'll never be best friends, but we've found a way to be family without the toxicity that defined our youth. Today marks a significant milestone. I'm hosting a gathering at the Penthouse, and for the first time I've invited the entire family. Uncle Robert and Aunt Margaret have agreed to come along with Lisa and Jordan. They'll be joining the foundation staff and several of the young women in our program for a dedication ceremony. As I arrange fresh flowers in the entryway, I think about what I'll say when I unveil the bronze plaque naming our main conference room, the Rose Sullivan Legacy Center. I want to honor Grandma Rose without making my family feel attacked or diminished. It's a delicate balance, celebrating her values while leaving space for reconciliation. The elevator chimes and the first guests arrive. Throughout the afternoon, the Penthouse fills with conversation and laughter. The young women from our program move confidently through the space, sharing their stories and aspirations with visitors. One particularly promising programmer demonstrates the app she's developing to help others, like her, navigate social services. When Lisa arrives, there's a moment of tension as our eyes meet across the room. Then she does something unexpected. She walks directly to me and offers a small wrapped package. "I found this in Mother's Things last week," she explains awkwardly. "It has your name on it. I think Grandma Rose meant for you to have it." Inside the box is a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm, a key nearly identical to the one that opened the safety deposit box years ago. There was a note, Lisa continues. It said, "For Danita to remind her that she has always held the key to her own destiny." For a moment, we both stare at the bracelet, a tangible symbol of the complicated legacy that connects us. I slip it onto my wrist where it catches the afternoon light. "Thank you for this," I say sincerely. Lisa nods, then gestures toward a young woman demonstrating coding techniques on a laptop. "Your foundation. It's impressive. Grandma Rose would have loved it." It's the closest thing to approval I've ever heard from her, and it means more than I expected. When the time comes for the dedication ceremony, I gather everyone in the main room. Standing beside the veiled plaque, I look out at the assembled faces, my once estranged family, my dedicated staff, the young women whose lives are being transformed in this space. Grandma Rose once told me that life isn't about what you're given but what you do with what you have. I begin. For years I thought this lesson was about material success, about proving my worth through achievement. Now I understand it was about something much deeper. I glance at Lisa, who is listening intently. True wealth isn't measured in square footage or bank balances. It's found in our capacity to transform pain into purpose, to use our experiences, both good and bad, to create meaning. This foundation exists because many people, myself included, know what it's like to feel lost and alone. We know the difference that one person's belief can make in a life. As I unveil the plaque, I see tears in several eyes, including, surprisingly, Aunt Margaret's. The greatest inheritance Grandma Rose left wasn't this penthouse or company shares. It was the understanding that we are not defined by our circumstances, but by how we respond to them. Not by what others think of us, but by what we know to be true about ourselves, and most importantly, by how we treat others, especially when there's nothing they can do for us in return. The rest of the afternoon passes in a blur of conversations and connections. I watch with quiet satisfaction as Uncle Robert engages earnestly with one of our scholarship recipients. Lisa exchanges business cards with our operations director discussing potential internships at the family company. As the gathering winds down and guests begin to depart, I find myself alone on the balcony watching the sunset paint Chicago's skyline in shades of gold and pink. 10 years ago, I left this city broken and bitter, carrying nothing but a mysterious key and wounded pride. My return could easily have been about revenge, about proving Lisa and her family wrong. Instead, it became about something far more powerful, finding purpose in pain, creating meaning from misfortune, and ultimately freeing myself from the prison of resentment. A gentle breeze carries the sounds of the city upward, mingling with the fading voices of my guests inside. I touch the key charm on my new bracelet and think about all the doors that have opened in my life, not just through Grandma Rose's literal key, but through the metaphorical ones I found along the way. Education, perseverance, forgiveness. The greatest success in my life isn't this penthouse or my billion-dollar company. It's the ability to look in the mirror each morning and see a woman who is truly free, free from bitterness, free to love, and free to continue her journey with gratitude. If you've stayed with me through this entire story, I'd love to know, have you ever had to transform a painful situation into something positive? What helped you move from hurt to healing? Share your experiences in the comments below. And please like and subscribe if this journey resonated with you. Remember, sometimes the most beautiful transformations begin with our deepest wounds. Thank you for listening, and may your own journey bring you to a place of peace.